We know that Mamdani does want to tax the rich more, bring it up about 2%. He can't do that on his own. You've previously said that you wouldn't be raising taxes. Have you reconsidered that stance?
No, I would say one energetic rally does not get me to change my positions, I assure you. But I do hear people's voices. 1.5% of New Yorkers cover about a third of our budget. That's enormous. I'm concerned about outmigration of people who are the ones who are supporting our budget. I cannot make up for that with middle class tax increases. I cannot do that to the middle class and the struggling New Yorkers. So this is the balance. I mean, this is my position.
So now that we've established that Zohran Mamdani will not be able to fulfill most of his core campaign promises, I think that one of two things is about to happen. Either on one hand, he will double down on his betrayal and ultimately give up on the anti-establishment crusade and end up embracing and sucking up to Democrat leadership for the purpose of political legitimacy, which we've seen many progressive revolutionaries, quote unquote, do before, or he's going to blame his inevitable failures on the Democrat establishment leaders in New York State like Kathy Hochul, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries, declare a civil war within the party ranks, and that'll create some pretty interesting primary challenges in 2026. Frankly, I have no idea. I could see both outcomes being the case. But that said, according to some recent reporting from the New York Times, we are already seeing indications that Zohran is caving to the establishment, apparently by quietly working behind the scenes to block a progressive primary challenge against Hakeem Jeffries. Now, keep in mind, this is the entire basis of everything Zohran's supposed to be about, right? The Democrat establishment leadership has failed. We're going to topple them all. And then the moment he wins his election, he's like, hello, Democratic establishment. Can I help you? Let's work together. Maybe we shouldn't do this. So this is pretty interesting. Who knows if it's going to be what ultimately happens, but I would like to point out that a bunch of his progressive supporters are seething over this. They're saying, no, that's not true. Zohran Mamdani would never surrender to the Democrat leaders who tried to screw him over in the first place, to which I would say, I don't understand how you can argue that idea is crazy when we've seen it exactly happen time and time again, whether that's Bernie Sanders, who got screwed over twice by the party. And then under the Biden presidency, basically sucked up. He went completely quiet. The whole strategy among progressive ranks was known as trust Biden, right? The idea is if we be cordial with President Biden, then that'll help us get some of our progressive priorities done. And what happens? None of his progressive priorities got done. They didn't even achieve the public option on healthcare that Biden promised on the campaign trail. And even when push came to shove, they were going to pass the $15 minimum wage in order to appease the progressives, and then Chuck Schumer took it out. Biden never tried to put it back into, I think it was the Build Back Better bill or infrastructure or inflation reduction, one of those things. And Bernie Sanders just sat there and took it like a you-know-what. Or that's AOC, who spent many years trying to suck up to Nancy Pelosi, hoping that maybe they'd give her a leadership position in the Congress. That didn't happen. Same story for Jasmine Crockett. And so I'm just warning you, progressives, you can say you don't believe it, but again, your heroes, your crusaders always freaking do this. Why? Because they're weak, they're spineless, and ultimately they are insincere. You know, you guys call basically every right-wing media figure a grifter who is telling you the truth here, but you never seem to point out, oh, our dark money candidates are claiming they're against dark money. You know, they're fighting the Democrat establishment, but they bend the knee at every single turn. Nonetheless, guys, I want to tell you about this apparent alleged development within the Democratic ranks in today's video. First, though, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, okay, let us tell you at least what the New York Times is reporting, right, alleging about what Zohran is working on behind the scenes. And let me be clear about this. To the progressives, I am actually rooting for you guys in this situation, which is to say, I'm not saying I want you guys to win, but I want you guys to go ahead with primarying all of the establishment figures because I actually want there to be chaos and division within my opposition. So I am actually sincerely hoping Mamdani here doesn't cave like Bernie and AOC and everyone before him did and actually says, no, screw that. We're going to primary Kathy Hochul. We're going to primary Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer. We're going to make sure a bunch of radical progressive socialists are running in 2026 because that'll actually be a massive asset to Republicans. But with all of that in mind, okay, so here is apparently an article about how Zohran Mamdani beat the New York City political class by basically sucking up to the New York City political class. Such an outsider, right? So here's what they said. For instance, at a packed meeting with the Association for a Better New York, a civic-minded group of business leaders. Now, keep in mind, Mamdani is a socialist. He's going to drive all of the business leaders out and blah, blah, blah. But then when he meets with them, he's like, oh, no, please stay in my city. I don't want to drive you away. Hey, progressives, how do you feel about that, huh? Shouldn't he be saying, screw the billionaires? You guys should all be in jail, or is this okay with you? I don't know. But in a Midtown office suite in early August, so this was all happening as soon as he won the Democrat primary, he began by offering condolences to Mr. Rudin, who co-founded the organization over this recent shooting. And then he surprised attendees by proposing a regulatory change that developers had longed for to speed up construction. So he was actually trying to give them here some major concessions on these big issues. Now, that said, some were expecting, guys, a strident ideologue, but they came away impressed. The billionaires liked Zohran. Oh, interesting, right? Typical socialist. They're against the millionaires till they become millionaires. And then suddenly they want to become a billionaire, right? Great grift. It's a great way actually to be incredibly wealthy is to become a socialist. For others, his willingness to engage was at least a welcome contrast to former mayor, some of you guys may remember, Bill de Blasio, who was a progressive that had made a point of conspicuously thumbing his nose at the Manhattan elite and to Mr. Cuomo's bruising style. So actually, some of these business leaders apparently were impressed that Zohran was trying to be cordial with them, not even fighting as hard, guys, as Bill de Blasio did, right? And Bill de Blasio, by the way, was a failed mayor. I think I remember AOC celebrated because Amazon decided not to build a factory or a warehouse. I think it was a headquarters maybe in New York City. And he kind of contributed to that too. But then he was like, oh, Amazon, please come back. Okay. But anyways, quote, he asked more questions and listened more intently to me and others in the room than I've seen from any politician surely in this city do. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting. Mr. Mamdani also took a new tone ever since he won the primary with fellow Democrats. Here's where it gets into the conversation over Hakeem Jeffries, for instance. When Chai Osei, a progressive city council member he was close to, began talking in October about potentially running in the primary next year against Representative Hakeem Jeffries, again, an idea that is super popular with progressives. After all, they want to unseat the powers of Democrat leadership. And so if you're going to continue the revolution here, right, you just beat Andrew Cuomo, is this not the next logical step? Well, they've been clamoring to do this for a very long time. So here's a progressive city council member saying, I'm going to try that. The moderate House Democratic leader, Mr. Mamdani and his team tried to shut it down. They actually tried to say, no, please do not primary Hakeem Jeffries. Now, if this is true, what could be the reason for that? Well, I think it's obvious. Now that he won, he wants the legitimacy, or maybe he's thinking, I'm so anti-establishment, but I don't want to step on too many toes because maybe then Congress will give more money to New York City. Wait, but I thought you're supposed to be overthrowing these people. Now suddenly you're protecting them from a primary challenge? What's going on there, right? Now, that said, and we've covered this one before as well, Mr. Mamdani had been a thorn in the side of Kathy Hochul, the New York State governor, for years, once saying that her actions were, quote, why people don't trust politicians. But he knew she had the trust of business leaders and would hold the keys to moving his ambitious plans through Albany, which people should remember. I mean, they were literally campaigning together, hugging each other. And of course, Kathy Hochul did what? Endorsed Zohran Mamdani.
This is about this November's election, but take that energy, that passion, and take it into 26 so that we can take back the House of Representatives, take the Senate, and take back our country. With your help, we will elect Zohran and we take back America. Thank you, Queens. Thank you, New York. I love you guys.
And by the way, we've extensively covered the divide between actually Zohran and Kathy, because Zohran's whole proposal to pay for free buses and many of his campaign promises is to raise the New York state income tax. But Kathy Hochul is publicly running her re-election campaign on no new taxes. So something here is going to have to give. The logical option for progressives would be, okay, we need to field a Zohran Mamdani endorsed primary challenger against Hochul. But suddenly Mamdani, now that he is the big dog, is saying, oh, I'm not sure if I want that to happen. Now, again, you could view it as coalition building. I understand the counter argument if you're a Zohran that, look, we're trying to work with other people. We're trying to bring people together. This is politics. You got to make deals. Sure, maybe that's almost kind of Trumpian of him. However, the issue, again, is that, well, when you're the smaller figure here and the Democrats are basically saying, even if they endorse you, they don't really want you. They don't really want your ideas. They're kind of just scared of a primary challenge. I mean, do you really think that strategy is going to work, right? Do you really think they'll ever embrace you? Again, ask how that went for Bernie Sanders with a $15 minimum wage and President Joe Biden. You know, ask how that went for AOC or Jasmine Crockett trying to get these leadership positions. This strategy does not work. But nonetheless, when the pair sat down in late June after the city's Pride Parade, he apologized for his earlier criticism of her and asked to work together, particularly around a shared interest in childcare. How revolutionary of him, guys. Ms. Hochul was pleasantly surprised. She initially told Mr. Mamdani that she would consider endorsing him, but wanted him to agree to keep Jessica Tisch, a well-respected technocrat appointed by Mayor Adams as police commissioner. Mr. Mamdani initially balked, explaining he had never even met her, but apparently he has since said he's going to keep that police commissioner in place, to which I say, how very BLM of him, right? Shouldn't he be dismantling the police force as we speak? But nonetheless, I mean, it basically goes on. You know that Hochul and Mamdani came around. And even here, when it comes to the question of Chuck Schumer, right? The New York-based Senate minority leader for the Democrat Party, take a listen to what he had to say just yesterday when it came to his own conversation with the revolutionary crusader Zohran Mamdani.
I'm moving forward. This morning I talked with Mayor-elect Mamdani. We had a very, very good conversation. We said that we cared about New York City and that we look forward to working together to help the city and improve the city. I congratulated him on running a very, very good campaign. And the issue that he has stressed is being stressed by Democrats across the country, from one end of America to the other, the high costs that the Trump administration is imposing on us and their failure to do anything about it. Yes.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering, although Chuck Schumer never publicly endorsed Zohran Mamdani and most likely voted for Andrew Cuomo in the primaries, now that's the conversation they're having together, right? It does not sound actually like they're about to have some type of dramatic party civil war. I repeat, who knows what's going to happen? I'm not really using this as definitive proof because I could easily see Mamdani backstabbing them or even the establishment backstabbing him, right? A lot remains to be awaited in terms of what's going to happen. And again, I say to progressives, I am rooting for you guys to go full steam ahead and actually mean what you say this time because I want to see the chaos. I would much prefer to be running against radical, insane candidates who are less electable than the establishment incumbents. So and you guys want this. So it's a win-win for both of us. But if you, for instance, read the comment section of all of these headlines that are, pointing out, hey, suddenly Zohran Mamdani does not want to primary Hakeem Jeffries, for example, you see a bunch of progressives down here saying, no way, this is coping, this is fake, this is not going to happen. Again, I'm not sure what's going to happen or not, but I would just say to the progressives to say that this is crazy. And I understand you guys are all like my age and you probably have no recollection of this. I started following politics when I was extremely young. That's the only reason I know about it. But This is a story we've seen like several times. Like this is always exactly what happens, okay? And you know how I know that, progressives? Let me tell a quick little backstory about myself. I know that because that used to be me. I used to be you. I used to sincerely believe and trust in these people, okay? Little backstory about myself, but contrary to perceptions that people probably have that I'm some type of lifelong hard right conservative, actually, I first started taking interest in politics around 2015, 2016. I was in middle school at the time. Now, some people might say, how could a middle schooler be into politics? I don't know. That was me. And I went to a gifted magnet. So we had the internet and a lot of kids actually were interested in it and we talked about it, etc. But this is all to say, when I first started out, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Now, I was never woke. I was never PC or pro-feminism, I guess we called it back then. A lot of Trump supporters thought I was one of them because I always sided with them in those types of debates. You know, I was never on that side. But I was a Bernie Sanders supporter because I thought, for instance, as many of you Zohran supporters do today, right, that he was a genuine anti-establishment outsider. He was fighting a crooked political system and it was bigger than left-right politics. I thought, for instance, that he was going to end the wars, that many of his solutions were going to ultimately unrig a rigged economy for Gen Z and all of this stuff. But simultaneously, I was always anti-Hillary Clinton. Okay, back then I thought she was the devil, although maybe, you know, I kind of still do. But this is all to say, you know, that's how I felt, okay? And I remember at the time, I watched Hillary basically steal the Democrat primary, okay? Those of you progressives who are old enough probably even remember the same thing. And there was a lot of talk in our circles about how, oh, maybe Bernie's going to try to contest the convention and we shouldn't allow this to stand because that's ridiculous. And obviously, again, Hillary Clinton, the physical embodiment of the evil, corrupt establishment I thought we were all fighting. And what does he do at the DNC? He gets up there and endorses Hillary and says, oh, all Bernie supporters need to vote for her, I should say. And that was one of the first moments where I was like, huh. You know, I'm not really so sure about this guy, right? I remember going into the election, I was not a Trump supporter, but I was rooting for him to win because, again, I thought Hillary was the devil. And then you can probably naturally see how I started to become more right-wing over time because, you know, the day after the 2016 election, me and the Trump supporters are like, the one Trump supporter at her school is like, yeah, we did it, you know? But okay, the reason I'm bringing this all up is because I've seen this story happen repeatedly. Okay? And you guys put so much faith into these genuine progressive populist outsiders. We're going to topple the Democrat Party. And then every single time, whether it's him, whether it's AOC or the squad, you know, AOC plus 3 after them, or, you know, what you're watching right now. No, absolutely. This is a very real possibility that you all should be aware of. Okay? And if it is the case, in your opinion, that Zohran Mamdani, whatever he does ultimately betray your values, don't just sit there and freaking take it, right? I don't know what else to tell you. You know, there are other options outside of it if you, genuinely feel like you're actually fighting some type of anti-establishment crusade. But yeah, you know, it's the grift we've seen time and time again. And it really shouldn't be all that surprising given the very candidate here, the progressive Zohran Mamdani, who's so against dark money in politics, or people around him are now currently admitting as we speak that actually his campaign was massively funded by CARE, that is the Council of American Islamic Relations, aka a bunch of dark money. And by the way, as we talked about before, a bunch of funding from the George Soros network. But he ran a grassroots campaign that was funded by the people and he didn't have institutional backing. Yeah, you guys really believe that about yourselves? Okay.
Right now, I'm a little more quiet because I'm on the quiet side of this race. But I'm going to tell you that once November 4th comes around, I will tell the story. The story is not just, that it's random that Zohran ascended to this place. It is our Muslim American communities. And I'll also say that it's Muslim money. The PACs that have supported Zohran, or a particular PAC that has supported Zohran, is probably over 80% of Muslim American donors in this country. High net donors, grassroots donors. And I want to make the point that the Unity and Justice Fund PAC, which is the CARE Super PAC, was the largest institutional donor to the pro-Zohran PAC in New York.
So the majority of the money, per Sarsour there, came from CARE, as in the Council on American Islamic Relations. as in the unindicted co-conspirator named in the FBI's terrorism finance case of 2007, as in the one that Chip Roy is just introducing a bill saying they can't get any money. They shouldn't get it. It's a terrorist front here. They kind of work kind of hand in hand, maybe not hand in hand, but they've held hands with somebody who's held hands with the other.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a story that we've seen time and time again, right? They claim to be so against the big money and the dark money. They're candidates of the people, they're grassroots. And you peel back the curtain 1 second, you realize the grift, as these people are literally taking a bunch of big and dark money, arguably from more shady sources than even the establishment Democrats are. Many such cases. And here we have another one, Mehdi Hasan, right? A top surrogate of Zohran Mamdani. He is a progressive commentator that claims to run a grassroots left-wing media company. And he's ranting at the Zohran Mamdani watch party, saying he's against the billionaires who spent millions of dollars to try to stop a guy whose name they refuse to correctly pronounce. Oh, they're the billionaires. They're the 1%. We're the 99%. And yet you peel back the curtain through easy things you can find on Google. You find out that Mehdi Hasan's media company, Zeteo, is actually funded by freaking New York City venture capital. I'm not funded by New York City venture capital. Okay, I just make money off the freaking ads on YouTube. Like, it's really simple, right? Here these people are. We're grassroots. The right-wing media ecosystem is all owned by Rupert Murdoch. We're the people fighting that back. Okay, funded by a group that apparently he raised $4 million for this from Bench Strength, which is a very new, but it's a venture capital fund in New York City that already has raised $62 million in its first year or first quarter or whatever, and is owned by a family, apparently like the Kenneth Chenault family, right, senior and junior, that's collectively worth, if you combine the two, like over $1 billion. But they're against the billionaires. We're being funded by the billionaires while we're against them. It's so freaking ridiculous, okay? But again, we have seen this time and time again. I've witnessed this personally, right? As these people claim to be against the establishment and then embrace the exact tactics of the establishment, not in a cynical way to win, but just in terms of like literally betraying their own principles. You know what I mean? I remember the term Bernie bro, for instance. You know where that comes from? Okay. That is a slur invented by Hillary Clinton supporters who were trying to use identity politics to say that, oh, the Bernie Sanders supporters are all like white men and therefore you're sexist. And it was a ridiculous strategy all along, right? And that was a moment, that was an early moment I was like, what is this PC woke stuff? Like, what does that have to do with gender, right? But then what happens 4 years freaking later, right? Bernie Sanders in 2020 runs a campaign that's socially woke. It's like you started off saying you're trying to unite the working class, and then what happens? They actually devolve into the identity politics, which historically is a way for the establishment Democrats actually to stop the progressives, but then the progressives just became that. Then they became the freaking woke lunatics, and you can tell the difference, right, in terms of who identified as a progressive like 10, 15 years ago and now. Now it's all just like the freaking weird nose piercing people, right? So, you know, many such cases, but, you know, that's, of course, the situation you're seeing. I would even argue in the mainstream media, right? The people that supposedly tried to sabotage Mamdani. Actually, if you look and listen to them, they're giving actually way too much credit to Mamdani. It's like they actually helped elevate Mamdani to victory. Because here you have them now saying all of this rhetoric about how Zohran is the future of the Democrat Party. And we've tried to point out, no, actually, he didn't do that well in the election, right? Barely, if at all, 50% in New York City, where, you know, the last mayor got 80% historically. Actually, he's basically saying, no, like, this is very untenable politics for the Democrat Party. And anyone who's honest, a sincere journalist, should be able to see that. But instead, they're exalting him as the new leader. But again, supposedly Mamdani is so against the institutions. As the institutions prop him up, praise him, and basically launch him into power, right? So it's so typical. It's so typical. So I'm rooting that I'm wrong about that, right? I want to see the primary challenges, but, you know, considering that, as we've talked about repeatedly, you know, the Democrat establishment is sort of in its own way infiltrated and ran by the same radicals. Yeah, I mean, we'll find out, okay? But I don't have great faith that Mamdani's even going to follow through on this campaign promise, right? Come on, dude. If you cannot fulfill the free buses and all this other garbage, at least fulfill on your sort of unspoken promise to fight the Democrat establishment status quo leadership. It shouldn't be that hard, but this is a progressive we're dealing with. For a progressive or a socialist to actually live like one and act like one and principally think like one, you will never see it. Okay, but anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.